Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. On this channel, we talk about problems people face in their day-to-day lives. Let's start with a video.
I was in love with this person, or let us say obsessed with him. It can also be said that he was my love at first sight. He worked as a manager in my dad's office and would often visit him at home for work-related issues. We met a few times at my house and then connected through Facebook. I already had a crush on him, so it took no time to build a friendship, first over Facebook and then to exchange phone numbers. We used to talk constantly throughout the day and would share each detail of the day. I had to hide this friendship from my dad, as he would have never approved it. Our friendship turned into a relationship, and we both were head over heels in love with each other. We would go out for dinner dates and drives, or I would visit my dad's office just to get a glimpse of him, but made sure that we were not watched, as my dad is a well-known businessman. Time passed swiftly, and we were sure that we wanted to spend our lives together. Now, of course, as we were so sure about each other, I had to announce our relationship to my family, but I could not dare to. I knew my dad would be furious and would never allow me to marry this manager. There was a huge class clash, too, as my dad was a rich businessman who was proud of his standards, and my husband was a mere employee. I also feared that my dad might put him in some sort of trouble, but there was no other way than to announce the relationship. One evening at the dinner table, I told my mom and dad that I was interested in someone and wanted them to meet him. My dad asked me who it was, to which I replied that I would tell them later, but at that time they had to promise me that they would consider my choice. My dad assured me that he would support me and would never leave my side in such a case. I told him that I would invite him over the weekend. I was very nervous, but this had to be done. It was soon the weekend, and I invited him over. As he had come before, he was let in the house and was told to wait. My mom and dad were getting ready. I went to him and told him that my parents were about to come, and he had to stand hard. I was there talking to him when my dad entered and told him that he could come some other time, as we were expecting guests. I froze in my place. It took me a few seconds to gather the courage, and I spoke straightforwardly that he was the guy I was interested in. My dad was enraged. He asked me to leave immediately, but I did not move. My boyfriend promptly spoke that he loved me so much and would care to the fullest. My dad was not ready to listen and asked him to get out of the house. My boyfriend left immediately. I was summoned a few hours later to explain the drama I had created. I very calmly told my dad that there was no one else I was going to marry. He told me that it was a shame for him that his daughter would marry a skimpy employee who was not even able to afford her lifestyle. I stood by my point and did not give up. Days passed, and I did not talk to my parents, locked myself up in my room, and did not join them for meals. It almost took a month when my dad at last tried to talk to me. I told him that I was still steadfast with my decision. He told me to ask my boyfriend to come over with his family. I was over the moon and thanked my dad like a little kid. My boyfriend came over with his family, and my dad was still not that comfortable. He started talking about how he had raised me, sent me to the best institutions, provided me with whatever I wished for. He was clearly pointing out the class difference. I was a bit embarrassed, but dared not to cut him off. He went on and said that there was a condition to this marriage if it ever took place, and it was that my boyfriend would have to disconnect from his family and move in with us, as I was my dad's only kid and he could not send me with those people. I was shocked and could not speak a word. My boyfriend was already nervous, and this made him even more anxious. His mother did not even utter a single word. They just said that they would inform me once they had decided. They had their tea and left our place. I tried to talk to my dad, but he was not ready to listen and told me that if he was compromising this much for me, I was supposed to support him with this condition. I am clueless and do not know what to do about it. I talked to my boyfriend about that, and he told me that he was the only support for his mother and could not leave her alone, to marry someone as it would be unfair. I asked him if he could commit to leaving her now so we could get married and then we would just move in with her, but he did not agree. He told me that he could not even give the slightest hint of agreeing with my dad's condition. The first reason was that he could not leave his mother behind and shift somewhere else where he would get all the luxuries, but his mom would suffer alone. He also told me that it was not just that my dad wanted him to move with us. My dad wanted him to give up on his family once and for all and cut off all ties. He asked how could he agree with not seeing his mom again, as it was as ruthless as it was. He told me that just because my dad was embarrassed about my boyfriend's background, he wanted him to dump his family, which was unfair. He also said that it was not acceptable for him, as his self-respect would shatter into pieces knowing that he married a rich man's daughter, shifted with them, and never looked back at his family. At first, I broke into a fight and asked him if he could not even just commit for the time until we got married. I told him that I went against my whole family and took a stand for him when I could just marry any of my cousins, but his self-respect was too big to handle. I thought about it calmly and knew deep down how unfair it was for him. I tried to talk to my dad several times, but he would not move an inch from whatever he had said. Both the men are not ready to compromise on anything, and here I am, suffering alone. My dad somehow agreed and took back his condition. We got married a month later, and everything was dreamy. I could not believe that we had made it through and were now together forever. I moved in with my husband, and it was not that difficult to adjust to the apartment, but I had to face some difficulties. A month or so passed when my husband came back from the office one day and told me that my dad wanted him to move in with my family, along with me, leaving my mother-in-law behind. I told him that the issue had been resolved already, and why would my dad say that now? He told me that only my dad had asked him to move in, but he was also threatened my husband that he would lose his job if he did not comply. I was shocked to my bones. I went to talk to my dad, but he was as stubborn as always. He told me that I had done whatever I wanted to, and now it was his turn. He told me that he was not just threatening and would literally kick my husband out and would end up on the road. I knew my dad was egotistic and could not accept my husband with his background. We both are deadly worried and are not strong enough to fight back. My husband had to switch jobs as it was getting too messy, and we could not stand against my dad more than that. I also started looking for a job and soon landed a suitable one and was able to afford our expenses. Just a week after my husband had left my dad's office, our landlord announced that we had to leave the apartment because his family had to shift there. I knew it was my dad who was not letting us live peacefully. All this fuss disturbed my mother-in-law too, and she would explode at me from time to time, calling me obnoxious and saying that I had ruined the peace of their lives. I got so much hurt, but would not reply as I knew I was the one who had caused the chaos. We had to move to another apartment too. Only a few days passed when my husband came back from work and made me and my mother-in-law sit for a discussion. He told us that he had to cut off one of us as he could no longer be a part of this drama. He told us that my dad had called him today to tell us that he would deprive me of his inheritance, would not let my husband work anywhere, and we will have to shift from one place to another place if my husband did not choose one of us. My husband told us that he was done with it and could not fight back as my dad was way more powerful and would give us a tough time until we did not give up. I knew this was the time I had to do something. I told my husband that we would switch the city and even the state if we needed to, and I would file a report against my dad for harassing us. My husband did not want to do anything against my dad now, but I had to tell him that I was his daughter and knew how to kick back. I have already reported against him, and we are all set to move to another state. NTA, this is so strong of you throughout your story, as you were not ready to give up and let your dad's ego win. I am impressed by your resilience, as if there was some other girl who had been raised in luxuries, she would have never come this far. It is hurtful that you were put into endless trials just because you wanted to marry a person of your choice, and your dad just could not accept the fact. NTA, OP's dad is the filthiest a-hole. His ego is so big that he cannot even see that his own daughter had suffered a lot because he was not ready to accept the facts. How could someone let his own child suffer just because he had to feed his ego? He could have provided his daughter with a separate house, but wanted to ruin her husband's self-respect by forcing him to move in with him. OP's dad just wanted to display his power and make OP's husband feel low and helpless.
Next story.
I, 25-year-old male, and my wife, 25-year-old female, recently eloped. Neither of us wanted attention or the expense of a big wedding, so we did our own little vacation where we got married. We didn't tell our families beforehand because we knew they'd freak out. They weren't thrilled to have missed it, but they accepted it and haven't given us a hard time since the initial shock. My sister, Kate, 27, female, on the other hand, has been planning a wedding for over a year. She and her fiancé dated 8 years before getting engaged, so to say she's been waiting for this day a long time is a bit of an understatement. Her wedding is in 2 weeks, and she's been slightly Bridezilla-esque in the last stages of planning. On Sunday, I was at my parents' house with her. My wife was not present. Kate expressed that she was mad at me for getting married so close to her wedding when I knew that this was a big deal to her. She said I was unfairly taking attention away from her. I told her that no, this was always our plan, and the timing had to do with when we could go on a certain trip that we took time off work for. It had nothing to do with her wedding. She then said that since it's so close and not everyone in our family knows about my marriage yet, we should not tell anyone and not have my wife wear her ring. I told her it's absolutely ridiculous to think that my wife, a newlywed, is not going to be wearing her wedding ring because a bride is jealous. I didn't even relay this request to my wife because it seems so ridiculous. Kate freaked out, and then I found out that she texted my wife yesterday very passively aggressively, saying it would be selfish of her to wear it at the wedding for 2 weeks. My wife hasn't responded and agrees with me that it's ridiculous, but also doesn't want to ruffle feathers either. She's pretty non-confrontational. But now my parents are involved, saying they agree Kate's request is dumb, but they kind of want to keep the peace. Skipping the wedding isn't being discussed before anyone suggests that, and Kate hasn't uninvited us either. I'm a groomsman, and our parents are paying, so she can't really anyway. But it's causing some annoying tension. Am I being unreasonable here? Neither my wife or I have social media. I'm not planning to make any announcement. I'm just saying my wife will be wearing her ring, and we aren't going to pretend we're not married. My extended family is not close. They are basically strangers to me, and my sister's friends are more just friendly acquaintances, some that I used to play sports with. None of them are people I would consider friends or would invite to my own if I were to have a traditional wedding. People asking why we did not wait a while to get married. It's tough to align our time off, and we want to purchase a house together, but not before marriage. Interest rates in the US are rising and are expected to rise more throughout the next year. Establishing our lives together was our priority. We were not thinking about someone else's wedding because we don't think the guests will actually care. It's obviously Kate and her fiancé's day, and we don't think any of the attention will actually be on us. Update, if anyone cares. Future brother-in-law called me last night saying Kate was embarrassed for how she was acting. He agrees with me that our recent marriage won't be a major topic of discussion and said, of course my wife can wear her ring. And we don't have to act like we aren't married. My dad made a point to say he won't shine the spotlight on us during his father of the bride speech, and we're not expecting others to make note of it in their toasts either. We're all good here. NTA, your sister are probably going overboard, but come on. You wouldn't have booked a conventional wedding so close to your sister's because it would be a huge distraction. So she's not crazy to feel like everybody finding out during the wedding will pull focus. We call people AHs all the time for wanting to announce a pregnancy or get engaged at someone else's wedding. If there's a time to get the announcement done before the actual wedding, that would probably be for the best. It can then be old news on the day itself.
Next story.
I, 16, female, am the oldest of 4 kids. As the oldest sister, a lot of responsibility is placed on me. 2 of my siblings, 13, female, and 9, male, are old enough to care for themselves. However, my parents had a baby, female, in 2019, and she's now 3. Since the day she was born, it has been my responsibility to watch her, which I have no problem with, but sometimes it gets tiresome. Don't get me wrong, I love all my siblings and I try to do my best for them, but I'm so tired. When it comes to my 3-year-old sister, I'm expected to bathe, feed, and help her get potty trained. But bear in mind, when I get off school, I have to go to work 3 days of the week and then come home and take care of my sister, which barely gives me any time for myself. I have complained to my parents multiple times. I'm tired of watching their child, but it's always, when I was your age, I was watching my little siblings. No matter what I do, it's always, you're the oldest, you should be able to handle it, be the role model. Fine. However, a few weeks back, it was a Sunday night around 9 p.m. and I was in my bedroom doing my hair when my parents called me into the kitchen. They asked me to get my 3-year-old sister and watch her so they could watch TV because she was being too loud playing with her toys. I told them I could not because it was getting pretty late and I had to finish my hair for school tomorrow. My mother snapped at me and told me that I needed to get my sister so they could have peace. My dad is a truck driver and my mother works at an insurance agency, but she works from home, so I get it. They can be tired after a long day. But that day, my father had gotten off work early, around 2 p.m., and my mother logged off at 5:30 p.m. But I also have other siblings that are capable of watching her, so why me? I then told her that my sister is not my responsibility and that I was not the one who conceived her and gave birth. My father then joined the argument and took my mom's side, saying that I was a lazy bitch that should be helpful because my parents get tired of working 24/7 and need a break. I was so heated that I told my parents again I am not my sibling's mom and I refuse to watch my sister. I then proceeded to walk away and shut my door and continued getting ready. The next morning, my mom and dad was saying, I'm an a-hole for not helping my parents out when they are so tired and need to relax. I told my friends what had happened when I got to school, and they said that I wasn't in the wrong, but I can't help but feel guilty for what I did. So, am I the a-hole? Google parentification. It's a form of abuse and exploitation. NTA. OP, I wanted to say something else, but I was worried I was reaching. Watch out for your parents trying to undermine you or your next oldest sibling from leaving home at 18 plus for college, trade school, work, etc. because they don't want to lose their free babysitter or third parent.